ここの車止まりなさい。
The first time I picked up a Super Nintendo controller in 1991, I remember how absolutely blown away I was at the look and feel of the new system's games. Before that, I had only ever played the Commodore 64 and NES, so my first taste of that new generation of gaming was extra sweet. Large, detailed sprites utilizing a seemingly limitless color palette. Simply put, SNES graphics were amazing in the early 90s and still hold up today. One of the major contributors to the impressive visuals on Nintendo's 16-bit hardware was of course its highly acclaimed pseudo 3D graphics pumping Mode 7. Its unique effects made for some mesmerizing backgrounds in action games, dynamic playing fields in sports titles, and awesome world maps in role-playing games. But perhaps the style of game that benefited most from Mode 7 was the racing genre. My need for speed on a game console had never quite been satisfied until I zoomed down the supersonic tracks in F-Zero. Once that game ran its course, Super Mario Kart came out, a title that kept me, my friends, and family glued to the television for countless hours at a time. It wasn't just Nintendo's racing offerings on the SNES that impressed either, with Ubisoft's Street Racers serving as just one example of a fine third-party published racer. But one interesting little game in the genre that can almost keep pace with the best of them on the Super Famicom, but is often left behind in the rearview mirror, is Kart Run. Kart Run was published on July 14, 1995 by a company that is most well known for its role-playing properties, Atlus, but was developed by Varié, a company with a history of working on racing titles. The game boots up showing a ripped-up wanted poster of the mysterious vigilante female racer known as Kat. The next scene shows her under pursuit by law enforcement, which transitions seamlessly into the start menu. At first glance, Kart Run looks like a fairly standard racing title from the era, with those Mode 7 features being put to good use. But there are a few things in particular that really set the game apart from its competitors, a couple of which are clearly displayed on the box art. The first is the anime aesthetic of the game, featuring a cast of colorful characters that are a great representation of the art style and feel of Japanese animation in the 90s. The game lets the player choose from 10 different drivers, 3 guys and 7 girls aged 18 to 25, who can be seen in real time during races via a kind of facecam setup. While there's no explicit overall story mentioned in the game or manual, each of these characters have their own background stories, as well as the typical Japanese-style profiles, complete with blood types. The only actual differences between them, though, come down to their looks and voices. My personal preference is the sexy and cool Yoko, but I'd be willing to bet money that the kind of people who are most likely to play this game, you know, weebs, will exclusively use the cat-eared teenage idol, Mika. The man behind the character designs is Minoru Okamoto, who often worked with Varié on titles such as the card-based strategy RPG Nage Libra and the Tokimeki Mahjong and Card Paradise games. The second thing on the cover that hints at one of the game's unique features is found in its full title, Kyaッツラン全日本Kカー選手権, or Kart Run, All Japan K Car Championship. Every single playable car in this game is based on real K car models from real automobile manufacturers. But what are K cars? Well, in case you didn't know, they're low-emission vehicles that emphasize the practical over flash, the K in the name being part of an abbreviation of K-jidosha, simply meaning light automobile. For a car model to fall into the K designation, it must adhere to certain size limitations in its frame and engine. These cars have been around since the beginning of the post-war era in Japan and account for a large portion of the vehicles roaming around the nation's roads, as they're popular with both individual drivers and businesses due to their ease of use, fuel efficiency, and most of all, the lower taxes imposed on K cars by the government. They're easy to spot, since most models tend to be on the blocky side, but what makes them stick out even more than that are their specialized license plates, which come in yellow rather than the standard white. But I think that's enough of a general rundown of K-cars. Back to video games. The game provides 10 popular models to race with: the Suzuki Cappuccino, Jimny, Altoworks, and Wagon R, the Honda Beat and Today, the Mitsubishi Minica Dangan 4 and Minica Topo, the Mazda AZ1, and finally, the Daihatsu Miraturbo TRXX. Unlike the drivers, each of these vehicles have unique attributes that are not necessarily reflective of their real-life counterparts, as stated in a boot-up splash screen, which also reminds the player to follow traffic rules. Cars are ranked between 1 and 5 stars in 5 separate areas, the first 3 being pretty self-explanatory: top speed, acceleration, and handling. The fourth is body, which basically determines how well the car fares when bumping into rivals, and the last is dirt, or how well the car performs off-road. Controlling one of these K-cars using default settings is very easy. B accelerates, Y brakes, and if you opt to drive using manual transmission, R shifts up and L shifts down. Mastering these simple controls is necessary not only to get to the finish line, but also to overcome the many hazards and obstacles found in each track, such as slippery puddles that cause you to spin out, even more slippery tundra surfaces, and water pits and cliffs. The latter two can be particularly troublesome since your car will sometimes face in the opposite direction after recovering from a dive. Not everything on the roads are dangerous, however, as power-ups are randomly scattered all throughout that can help out during a race. With the exception of just one, all of these items are weapons, and they're pretty comical. An oil drum, a teddy bear, a high heel, a bag of spikes, and fireworks, shaped like a cartoon bomb. Pressing A will activate whatever item is currently in your possession, with those previously mentioned functioning as projectiles that shoot ahead and cause rival cars to either spin out or slow down. It can be pretty hard to hit your opponent, so aim carefully. The other item is a Nitro Boost, easily the most useful item of the bunch. Only one item can be picked up at a time, and once one is collected, no others will appear on the road until that item is used up. The placement of power-ups is very sporadic, often in hard-to-reach places, and sometimes even in areas that can't be accessed. While I guess it's nice that an item system is in place, its implementation feels like an afterthought at best, and a somewhat poorly tacked-on feature to try to give the game more depth at worst. There are 3 options available from the main game screen: Street Race, Versus Race, and Configuration, or Single Player, Multiplayer, and Options. Street Race is the heart and soul of Cats Run and provides 2 ways to play: Straight Run and Choice Run. The former is a marathon race of each of the game's 10 tracks back to back, and the latter cuts the playable tracks in half, but lets the leader of the race veer either left or right to choose the next area. No matter which mode you go with, you'll always get to select your driver and K-car and battle against 9 rivals for the top spot. The 10 tracks in Cats Run are well designed and look great, featuring a nice mix of different locales. You'll be speeding down highways, cutting through country farmlands, and cruising by nighttime metropolitan cityscapes. And as for the music that accompanies these tracks, well, call me crazy, but I'm of the opinion that it's some of the best on the Super Famicom. If you weren't aware, you've been listening to the soundtrack for the entire duration of this video. Don't tell me you haven't been digging it. The flow of gameplay in Cats Run is much like Yu Suzuki's arcade masterpiece Outrun, where instead of racing laps on a circuit, each track is a single straight course with many twists and turns. There's no minimap, but visual prompts will pop up to let you know what kind of turn is coming up next. The end of an area is marked by a red ball, and the change between tracks takes place in real time, also like Outrun, but instead of a sleek, smooth visual transition, the backdrop just goes black when the switch occurs. A neat aspect of Street Race is that it doubles as a high-speed police chase, since a lady officer named Sayoko is always at the tail end of the pack in her patrol vehicle, and if she catches up to you, well, it's probably not going to lead to hard time, but you will get a game over. Versus Race lets 2 real drivers and 2 CPU-controlled opponents race in 4 unique stages. Unlike Street Race, multiplayer is set up more like a standard racing game, consisting of 4 laps around a short course and without a power-up item in sight. Versus Race can be pretty fun in short bursts, but it's admittedly quite limited. It's too bad there's no option to play with a friend in Street Race or something similar. In the options menu, you can turn items and the BGM on and off, switch between mono and stereo sound, cycle through a few different control schemes, and select easy, normal, or hard difficulty modes. Normal is the default setting, and it's really not much of a challenge to maintain the lead in either straight or choice run. Well, at least until the very end. If you're in the top spot and cross the finish line of the last track in either mode, you get to challenge the legendary Kat in a one-on-one race. She drives the same car as you, but with an all-black paint job and souped-up specs. Kat is a tough and worthy opponent, but if you do your best, persevere, never give up, and trust your instincts, you'll get left in the dust coughing up the exhaust smoke and wonder how it is that you've been so defeated. The final trial in Kat's Run is an uphill climb, and odds are that when facing off against the vigilante driver, you'll lose and lose and lose, over and over and over again. While you can pause the game anytime, there's no option to retry a track, so making a critical mistake on the final lap will most certainly result in a loss, meaning you'll have to restart from the very beginning just to take another stab at dethroning the Queen of the Road. Reducing the difficulty to even the odds is no solution either, because Kat doesn't appear at the end and instead you'll be encouraged to up the challenge next time. Although it seems you have to put on an absolutely flawless performance in order to best the outlaw racer, even as an extremely flawed individual, I did discover a pretty surefire method of beating Kat, one that requires two things, the first of which is the Nitro Boost. Chances are you'll run into at least one of these power-ups somewhere before the race with Kat, so when you do, snatch it up and hold on to it until you make it to the end. I doubt you'd need it in the standard race anyway. The second thing you'll need is the Suzuki Jimny. Although it has the lowest top speed of all vehicles in Kat's Run, and isn't really known as a powerhouse vehicle in the real world either, the Jimny balances things out by having the highest off-road performance in the game, with a dirt rating of 5. Because it's so slow in comparison to other models, driving effectively with the Jimny requires venturing off the beaten path often to take as many shortcuts as possible. Since Kat drives so perfectly, never straying from the asphalt, this is where you can get the edge over her, because the last area has many opportunities to cut corners. In particular, there's one vast section of dirt here that you can drive through quite smoothly using the Jimny and shave a significant amount of time off your run. After that, hitting the Nitro Boost you've saved up on the final stretch will almost guarantee a first place finish, as well as a real feeling of satisfaction from the win. Besting Choice Run rewards the player with nothing but a simple ending screen and a brief credits roll, but doing so on the longer straight run will unlock a few extras in addition to the obligatory bragging rights. First off, Kat's true identity is revealed, 25-year-old Miki Hayasaka, who you can now select as your driver. Playing as her will transform whatever K car she drives into a black version with boosted specs, as would be expected. In addition to Miki, the police officer Sayako will also be added to the roster of drivers, and while she's quite the cutie, it's what's attached to her that's more exciting. Her mini patrol car, sporting 5-star ratings in every category. Since there's no save function in the game, pressing start while holding A, B, X, and Y on the title screen will unlock these for later play sessions. Well, that's pretty much the gist of Kat's Run. Looks and sounds pretty good, plays well, but several flaws, big and small, throw a wrench on its path to becoming a Mario Kart or F-Zero. I've already mentioned a few of the minor things, but at this point I'm pretty sure you've realized what the game's biggest pitfalls are, its short length and lack of replay value. Going through Straight Run will take anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes, and with Choice Run featuring half the tracks, it naturally takes half that long to complete. The multiplayer can be fun, but there are better racing games on the Super Famicom for couch play that offer many more customization options than the handful provided here. Completing the game on hard doesn't unlock anything that normal doesn't, so there's really not much of an incentive to play beyond the standard difficulty. Kat's Run seems kind of incomplete. It's a game with solid presentation and mechanics, and a lot of wasted potential, as its negatives could have been easily rectified in a sequel, one that would never come. Because of the emphasis placed on the characters, I wondered if there might be an obscure manga or anime that tied into the game, but there's nothing. I think it's possible there may have been such plans in the initial phases of development, but if there ever were, they never came to fruition. Sadly, unless you really love K cars or the character designs in the game, you probably won't be coming back to Kat's Run too often. It's a shame, because I still think it's a fun racing title for the Super Famicom that's worth playing for its unique features and genuinely fun gameplay and atmosphere. And it's quite cheap, so that makes the decision to pick it up even easier for collectors. Anyway, that's all I've got for episode 39 of Import Gaming for the Win. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, this is Jimmy Hapa. Take care.